Hi, I'm back for chapter 11. You can see that I couldn't wait, so same clothes, same day, reading chapter 11. It's called Mounted Under Glass. Nora, welcome. Oh, I should have made that sound like a man, sorry. Nora, welcome. It was the beginning of fifth period. Dr. Trindler motioned me to a chair across from him at a square table. He seemed a little too happy, but I didn't mind. I was his big project for the afternoon, and I figured that the man must love his work. Dr. Trindler had two jobs. He was the guidance counselor for our school, but he was also the psychologist for the 3 elementary schools and the junior high school in Philbrook. Plaques and diplomas and certificates covered 2 walls at the office, all of them mounted under glass like some flat, colorless butterfly collection. As my eyes jumped from rectangle to rectangle, suddenly I pictured myself pressed thin as paper, trapped in a frame on his wall, my nose jammed against a sheet of glass. And then I saw myself like a specimen between 2 glass slides, with Dr. Trindler peering at me through a microscope. I pushed those thoughts away. Dr. Trindler's assistant was Miss Drummond. She was the counselor when he was out working at other schools. She sat at a desk about 10 feet away from the table where I was sitting, but she was in a different room on the other side of the wall that was mostly one big window. "So," Dr. Trindler said, "are you ready for some fun today?" I nodded. "Sure, I guess so," but I still felt like a sheet of glass was pushing on my nose. "Good," he said, "then let's get going. I'd like to give you a test, but it's not a regular classroom test. It's a test that'll help me and all your teachers understand the best way for you to learn, okay?" I nodded and he kept talking. "We'll start with some questions. I'll read them out loud one at a time and you'll answer each one as best you can, and I'll keep track of your answers on this sheet, okay?" I nodded again and said, "Okay." I could see the sheet he was writing on. On the upper right-hand corner, it said WISC 3. I knew what that meant. Dr. Trindler was giving me an IQ test. On an IQ test, you get a score, and then sometimes they divide your score by your age, which is why IQ means intelligence quotient, because of that division. It's kind of complicated, and I had only read a little about IQ testing on the internet, and that's why I started to get worried about this test. The Connecticut mastery testing had been easy. I got an average score because I had been able to look up the scoring information on the internet. That's the way I knew how many to get right and how many to miss on each part. This test was different. I'd never seen it before. Dr. Trindler didn't waste any time. First, he asked me a bunch of questions, and I had to answer them out loud. And I had to group some things into categories, then do some math problems, then match a bunch of word definitions, then answer more questions about what I do in different situations, and then I had to remember the order of some numbers and repeat them back to him. Then I looked at pictures and had to say what was missing, and I had to copy marks from one page to another and then mess around with some colored blocks and some puzzles. The test went on and on, over a dozen different parts. It took almost 2 hours to finish, and all the time I was worried. I didn't know how I was doing on this test because I didn't want my score to be too high or too low either. All I could think of was to try to mess up on 3 questions out of every 10. That made sense to me. I figured that would keep my score at about 70%, and that would be like a C, which would be normal. I kept watching Dr. Trindler's face for clues to see how I was doing, but it was like he had a mask on. And then finally he said, "There, we're all done." That wasn't so bad, was it? I shook my head and said, "No, it was fine." And then I said, "When will I get to see my scores?" "Well, that will be up to your parents, Nora. On this kind of test, we never give the scores to the students." I couldn't believe it. I said, "You mean I have to take the test, but I don't get to see the score?" He shrugged and smiled. "It's just the way it is with a test like this. Your score is kind of like a tool, something for me and Miss Hackney and your parents to use. You really don't have to worry about it at all." I felt myself getting angry because I hate stuff like that. When grown-ups treat kids like they're stupid or like they can't be trusted, it's very annoying. Smart old Dr. Trindler with the long skinny fingers could know my scores because he had all that paper hanging on his wall. But me, the kid who just beat her brains out for 2 hours, I wasn't allowed to know anything. And I said to myself, But so what? Grown-ups run everything and it stinks and there's nothing kids can do about it because that's the way it's always been and that's the way it's always going to be. Big news. Then I caught myself. I hate to catch myself thinking like that. That kind of attitude has a name. It's called being cynical. It comes from the Greek word for dogs, kunikos, because there was this bunch of losers in ancient Greece, sort of a club called the Cynics. The Cynics had no respect for anything or anybody, like a dog who chews up your best shoes and then wags his tail, or makes a mess on your front lawn right while you're watching. The kunikos doesn't care, and it does what it wants to, and it assumes everyone else is the same way it is. But I had caught myself. I didn't let myself be cynical because that's too easy and because I knew better. People like Dr. Trindler didn't do things because they're mean or cynical. They did things because most of the time they actually believed those were the right things to do. He thought it was bad for someone like me to know my own IQ score, and maybe he was right. If the score was low, then I might think I was stupid, and if the score was high, then I might think I was better than somebody else. But then I asked myself, how are these IQ scores different from grades or the mastery testing scores? How come they don't hide all grades and scores from kids? Teachers need to know the grades so they can figure out how to help kids do better and learn more, but why do kids need to know them? After all, those CMT scores didn't help Stephen, not one bit. Anyway, Dr. Trindler said goodbye and Miss Drummond wrote me a pass to go to last period. And after 2 hours of thinking, gym class was wonderful because all during the fall, we played soccer almost every day. When I was 3 years old, I saw a soccer game for the first time on the local Spanish TV channel, and I went nuts for it. I loved the way the camera showed almost the whole field at once. I could see the players plan and make plays, and I could see the math too. The crossing lines as a striker speeds up to meet a flying corner kick, and the angles as midfielders passed the ball, so it was always just beyond the defender's toe. I saw angles again as players blocked passes and cut off shooters. Each shot on goal was a balance of velocity and trajectory. It was all math and physics in motion. And soccer was such a mental game. The best players had the whole field and all the other players completely inside their heads. The field wasn't out there. It was all inside. And then, goal! Fantastic. Ever since first grade, the soccer field had been the only place where I really let myself loose. I had never had to hide anything out on the soccer field. I could be as smart and creative and talented as I wanted to because nobody ever treats a gifted athlete like she's weird. And that's not true if you're a gifted student. So during gym class, it was me, 4 other girls, and 6 boys against another mixed team of 11 kids. And Stephen was on my team. It was a good, quick game, and we won it 4-3. I scored 2 of our 4 goals. But the best part wasn't the winning or the praise from Mr. McKay or the high fives from my teammates. I hadn't been trying to beat anyone or prove I was great. For me, the best part was when the game was tied at 3-3 and there were less than 2 minutes on the clock. With my hair pulled back into a ponytail and my legs and arms and lungs pumping away, I felt like I was 100 feet above the field, calmly looking down. The need to think and analyze and plot and plan melted away. Ideas were the same as actions, and I didn't have to hold anything back. And when Stephen sent me a perfect pass, I drove to the center, dribbled through 3 defenders, and then beat the goalie. It was pure play. No questions, no worries, no walls, no frames hanging on nails, no sheets of glass trying to press me down flat. For 25 minutes on that Tuesday afternoon, I was free.